Now, like there are different ulama give different opinions and so on, what to do or not to do. Now, generally, as I said, they have said stick to the silver one, and that is the practice of many of the people in Trinidad and many places in the world. When it comes to gold zakat, it's similarly allowed. There's no thing that stops a person from sticking onto the gold. What I would recommend, and this is my personal opinion, I've had the same. So in Jamia in Marabella, right? There's a Darul Iftar there, right? And they say that they recommend the gold nisab. Asja follows the gold nisab. Darul Uloom follows the silver nisab. Right? So again, it's all open. Anybody honestly can choose accordingly. In your masters and thing, you can. My way of solving that problem is that when a person is now starting and that person is now building up themselves for the first time, now going to a job, now trying to find themselves, now trying to have a stable housing, trying to have a stable whether or not you have to play right now, you can receive, you cannot receive, and all these kind of things. And if a person has generally established themselves, although you might not have plenty, but you have a place to say you are contented with Allah's blessings upon you, you're okay, you have something coming in, you know that something's happening, then you don't want to pay zakat, you don't want to get from the benefits of paying zakat, you don't want to, be able to get and reap from the bounties of Allah subhanahu wa ta'ala is bestowed with regard to zakat. So at that time you'll go on the silver one. So that's the determinant factor between gold and silver nisab. Yes. Now that's the next question that comes up. If your spouse have gold that is worth $5,000, does that have anything really to do with this gold and silver nisab? A simple answer from our modern day economics: no. The actual gold and silver that you have, the jewelry that women have, they have nothing to do with this gold value and silver value. So try to remember that and try to place that into your minds, because this is where most people have misunderstood the whole concept of zakat, right? Because what happens, they go ahead and say, no, no, I don't have this much gold, or I don't have this much silver, I don't have silver and gold, and it has nothing to do with silver and gold in reality. It's about worth and a value system. And that's why those two figures are being said over and over. Have nothing to do with actual gold. So if you have gold, which is worth $10,000, it doesn't matter. The question is, are you on the silver nisab or are you on the gold nisab? Essentially. So then, right. So you have $10,000 worth of gold. This women normally have this issue. They have $10,000 worth of gold. You check the value, make sure that you check it. And trust me, when you check the value of gold that you have, you pay much less. That's why we offer service in Al Ihsan Institute here. To come and weigh your gold, and I'll tell you the value of your gold. Because gold value is not what you pay in the store. It's the actual value of the gold, right? Not the value of the workmanship and the value of being in the store and going there. So what they do is obviously they're selling at retail value. The worth that we're talking about is gold value, right? So there's two different values there. And that's what I'm saying. Many women, if they were to go and calculate their jewelry amount, they'll realize they have to pay much less. I mean, drastic less. In fact, it's less than half of it. You have $50,000 worth of gold, that's less than $20,000 worth of value. So that's a benefit in a sense. That's why I made the announcement this morning. When somebody calculates their zakat properly, they actually pay less out. And the rest, if they want to pay more, is fisabilillah, is sadaqah, is feeding, whatever it is. But it's not required obligatory amounts. And it's always good to pay more, but nevertheless, when you check it properly, you realize that you're actually paying much less all the time. So that's the thing about that. That's the value of gold and the value of silver. They have a difference in nisab. So that's what I wanted to share with you because that makes a big difference of whether you don't have to pay or you don't have to pay. Now the thing about the gold is if you do have gold now that is worth more than $38,000 worth of value, then obviously you have to pay regardless, right? And if you have silver amount that more than $38,000, you have to pay regardless. And if you have cash, you have to pay regardless. So once you're above that, everybody will have to pay regardless, right? So let me see if there's any questions here in the Zoom. I've seen some. All right. So, like, what is the value of gold and silver in the time of the Prophet Sallallahu Alaihi Wasallam? So that was mentioned just now, right? 200 dirhams and 20 dinars, right? That's the amounts. So I hope that part of the nisab is clear because that's one of the things that a lot of people would make mistakes on. Any questions on that, nisab? Good with that? So do it with uh, proper understanding. Is if you're paying or you're not paying, you're payer or you're not payer, right? Because you're either one. Yeah, you're either booking a ticket to go for Hajj or you're not booking a ticket, you're staying home. Exactly. Right. So even with that, that's where it comes out. And now that's where you say now nisab and zakat calculation is not a matter of how much money I have on me right now. Is what is your zakatable assets at the closing of the year. So, for example, yeah, sometimes we pay out our bills and so on. You don't have any cash remaining per se, or you don't have cash flow. I know millionaires, hundreds of millions of dollars worth of wealth, but if you ask them to take out $10,000 in cash, they don't have $10,000 in cash. You don't have it in, I think you have it in assets, similar like the Sahabi we're talking about. They don't have it in cash that they can go and pay their zakat now. But when the year closes, you calculate your zakatable assets, you figure out your amount, and you have your figure with you now. Now fulfill your obligation to Allah as soon as you can, pay it. So you don't pay zakat on your house that you live in now. The cash that you get from the zakat. Right? So that's the benefits of the deen does cover some of the things that we may not think about initially. All right, let me go to this thing. Everything shut down and cut off. Even the live not getting video right now. You seen the video on the live? All right, no problem. We just continue. I wanted to actually, what I'll do today, I'm going to share on the Nur-e-Islam and Alisan or whatever WhatsApp groups, Excel sheet. Right, the Excel sheet give you the today's value of the gold with different types, tiers of gold, because gold itself, you have 24 karat gold, you have 22 karat, you have 18 karat. Each one of them have a different value too. So with the values, you're able to actually calculate. Now, why do all these things? Some people, some ulama have heard say, scholars saying, hey, you have to pay zakat on gold. Don't worry, there's the price of gold. Right? Now, the price of gold, it's a measure of value. So I can't understand myself. How do you give the measure of value without saying what type of gold it is? Because you're not going to hand me a 22 karat gold and hand me a 10 karat gold ring looking the same and say they would the same, right? And say, well, here what? You have to pay the same. What some people would say to you as well, hey, pay on the highest amount. 20, 24 karat gold. So 24 karat gold is worth, per gram is like some kind of 400 and something dollars per gram. So if you say, okay, that is worth that, and the other one was worth like 200 or 100 and something dollars, you're telling me to pay, which is not a problem to pay, right? But if you're being honest about it and transparent about what is your zakat due, then you tell me how much I have to pay on this item that I have on me, right? do I have to pay this amount or do I have to pay that amount? Because again, I told you all, it's a mathematical figure. It's figures that you're dealing with. So, I know big Darul Iftars and so on, they will say, no, no, just pay on everything. They won't tell you about this gold nisab. They won't tell you about, calculating your zakat. They'll just say, hey, how much you have. They won't tell you what is non-zakatable assets and zakatable assets, right? So some of the forms that you get to, they're incomplete. They're not giving you all the details. So then they're just general things. Now, mashallah is thing, but that's outdated. You have the knowledge, you have the ilm right in front of you. Give the people what they need to see, right? Ilm is something you can't hide. Ilm is something that if you do kitman al ilm, if you hide knowledge, you'll be answerable on the day of judgment for it. So we do have that issue that you face sometimes when it comes to zakat as well, right? So these are some of the things. Okay, so quickly going on zakatable assets, I'll go through it really quickly, inshallah. You can stop me at any time when you want or put any messages on, inshallah, and I'll address it one time. So, the detail would be covered, which you're looking for, and also it wouldn't go too much into, I wouldn't go too much into details that may not be somewhat of a need right now. Okay, so moving to what is zakatable assets, that's important to understand, right? Things like I just mentioned them: cash, receivables, gold, silver, trade assets, investments in zakatable assets, agricultural produce, animal, livestock, and so on. So cash, we understand that. Cash, your hand in your bank, cash, petty cash, cash in your drawer, cash under your mattress, cash in coins, cash in different currencies, cash in, you have to go and pick up some money later, cash in a check form, anything like that, right? All of the aspects of what we would call cash, they're all zakatable. Zakatable receivables, anything that gets things zakatable annually whilst outstanding. So loans, zakat is payable on loans each year. So if you give out loans, you still have to pay. That's your money, right? You still have to receive that. You still have to. The lender has the option to pay annually, or alternatively, he can pay on previous years when he gets payment. So, for example, if I lend someone $100,000 and they pay me over 5 years, right? What I can do is I can pay each year on the $100,000 because that's mine, and every year you have to pay on that same $100,000, the capital amount, right? But if you're saying that, okay, well, I do have it in my hand right now, and you know what, I my cash flow, and I can't do it right now, then okay, in 5 years, when you collect the $100,000, you'll pay, but you have to pay it once, twice, 3 times, 4 times, 5 times, because every year you pay zakat. So some people rather, you know what, yeah, I know I give out loans, I'll pay my zakat now because I don't want to pay after I collect everything. I'll have to pay how many every years that I've been waiting for that money. So that's important. Credit sales, and that's the next thing. If you have bad debts and bad loans, and you think that you're not going to receive it, and the person like generally not going to pay it, or you have serious reason to believe that that's gone now, then write it off clearly. Say, okay, I forgive that, or I'll pay you off, or I'll give you zakat, I'll give it as zakat. We'll talk about that, but write it off. Don't beat around the bush. You know you're not gonna get it, and you're saying, well, I still have to pay on it. So what do? Find a way to resolve and put a hard line on it. And if it is you are hopeful, then mashallah, you're hopeful you're gonna get it. So just wait until it comes. Credit sales, zakat is payable each year on the outstanding payments from trade, stock, and assets. So whenever you get receivables, to that's a receivable. Non-zakatable annually whilst outstanding is things like non-trade receivables, payouts and awards, claims and damages, settlements, inheritance, shares. So those are some things that you may get that might not be like it's pending. So for example, somebody have a lawsuit, right? You're expected to get, $1 million in damages, right? So do you have to pay on that $1 million? No. Until you actually receive it, it's not yours. Right? You don't have to count it in. If it's inheritance, you're supposed to get. Like your parents, you know, put your name on a will, give you a certain amount, and then when they die, you're going to get it. That's not yours, right? You'll get that when that time comes. Then when you have it in your hand, then you check it. So these kind of things, settlements as well, these kind of claims and so on, you don't have to pay. Yes, because you're selling the property to be able to. It's cash in hand now, and it's yours. So then, if you sell a property when, um, although you don't intend, I mean, you intend to buy another property and you may need it, um, it's still in your hand at that anniversary. So that's why the anniversary is so important, right? Because sometimes you have a sale in between the whole thing. What do you do at that point? Is either you have to pay it or you don't have to pay it. The anniversary determines that. Uh, Yeah, I mean that's the thing. You don't try to beat Allah's system. What you're trying to do is, and sometimes genuinely you have a situation, and that's what you call a hila. There are some hiyal within Deen in everything, in ibadat wise. There's some allowances that Allah, and even at the time of the Prophet Muhammad, sorry, in the Quran, Allah talks about hiyal. Let's just touch on that quickly. Hiyal is when a person, for example, has an obligation to fulfill, but yet, with all honesty and sincerity, he can't fulfill that properly. So Allah subhanahu wa ta'ala gives you another way to do something that facilitates for it, and you don't actually do it because Allah is merciful too. And that's why when people hear about this, they think quickly on certain stories, but they don't think about the other stories. I'll give you an example. At the time of Ayyub alayhi salatu wasalam, when Allah subhanahu wa ta'ala commanded, no, he took an oath that I will give my wife 100 strokes if she when I think when she went to speak to someone, it was shaitan or something like that. I can't remember the exact detail right now, but 100 strokes. So when the oath took place and he became Harith, he had to fulfill that oath now. He became good and he was well. Now his wife was dedicated. She was doing something all the time for him. She was loyal. She did not betray him. She was just genuinely trying to get ease and help for Ayyub alayhi salatu wasalam. But he took an oath that if she did so and so and so, he would give her 100 lashes. So Allah subhanahu wa ta'ala commanded him, take a, give you a good example of our society, we understand. Take a cokia broom and just once. So all the broomsticks or a palm tree, all the things at one time is the 100 done. Finish. Right? And just do that. So you will be completing your oath at the same time you're not harming the person. And likewise, when the Prophet Yusuf alayhi salam, he needed to keep his brother Benjamin for hikmah and wisdoms that Allah subhanahu wa ta'ala granted him. So he took a cup and he hid it in the property of Benjamin in his clothing. So when they went to look for the cup, they said the cup is missing, the cup is missing. The law at that time, whenever a thief is caught with property that is stolen, then he himself is the now ownership goes to the person who he stole from. So now he's given to that person. So at that time, Yusuf alayhi salam hid a cup in his thing, and he didn't say that he stole it. He said how when they found the cup in Benjamin's property, he said, "Was the law again? What you all said the law was, right?" I said, "Well, the law is." So the brother said, "Well, the law is whoever's property is found, they will be given." So he said, "Okay." So he sat down. Now he doesn't have anything to do. He has to stay. Right? So similarly is hiyal. Now that is wisdom of Allah, and there's a whole conditions that comes with that hiyal, is that you do something sincerely for the purpose of deen, for the strength of deen, for obeying Allah's command, is for being sincere to try to make sure that you are good with Allah. Then a hiyal is applied. That's why ulama have understood and knows the different type of hiyal as well when it comes to matters of deen. So they'll say, okay, well, so and so problem you're facing. Okay, well, you have to fulfill the law of Allah. Do it in this way. It becomes easy for you. It takes away some of the burden. That's why Allah has made yusr, ease, and that's why they have given us a sharia. It is within the law, but has allowances that gives you that ease to come out of situations, yet be in the green with Allah, not going to red. So this is what some of the benefits of, even when it comes to zakat and these kind of issues as well. And it's beautiful because that's where ilm comes about, knowledge. And then you alhamdulillah, because a person is sincere, he gets the thing, and he's like, oh Allah, I actually, you're so grateful. You see, if you're so happy that, what, Allah's made it so easy for me. Look, Allah's made it such that I can have some ease. All right, so moving on, another asset is gold and silver. So the Hanafi madhab is such that all gold and all silver is treated as it, whether worn, stored, investment, billion coins, actual bars, whatever it is, it's all considered. It's a origin wealth, worth, money, um, so it doesn't lose its value. So mixed metal jewelry as well, similarly, is also um, yes, so it's always due on gold and silver. Which price can you think at? Gold and silver should be priced at what you will receive if you were to sell these assets. This is known as a scrap value, which you can search as scrap value online. So basically, that's what you would call it scrap value too. You know how bad some scrap values are, and that's why we still use the trading value, which is the worth of it, which is still lower than what you will pay in a store to buy a jewelry, right? Scrap value. You can pay something $10,000 for gold in a shop. You buy a piece, and then you go and try to pawn it. You ever try pawning gold and see what you got? Next to nothing. You might be able to get a few thousand, or 1,000 to 2,000 if so. You know, really, really, really terrible thing. So that's the thing. So even with that, you and some places are much more harder than other places. So the value is the value that we get. So you'll get that on the form, inshallah, that I'll send you on. So anybody who's online and they want these forms, you can message the WhatsApp group 868-675-7145. That's the masjid number. So the masjid number has WhatsApp now. So you can message there and put your inquiry and you'll get back things. So even with joining the WhatsApp group, or you have some kind of communication that you need to send, you could WhatsApp it as well to the masjid number. Before we didn't have WhatsApp on it. So we made that recently before Ramadan. So now you can message directly to there and they'll send you files and folders, pictures, wherever you need to get, whenever you need to get something. So 675-7145. Last thing, residential property, no zakat. One's residential property or holiday homes are not zakatable as they are part of one's personal assets which are needed for living. To buy and sell, right? Buy to sell, zakatable as listed price. Properties bought for trading and capital gain are zakatable. Zakat is due on their listed price. If you change your mind and decide not to sell a property, zakat will no longer be due on that property. Right? Once you're trading it, it's on zakat. When you're not trading it, you keep it. Right? And it's all on your intention. Yeah, still 1.8 because it's like stock in trade one, and then on top of that, you remember you only checking at one point is your anniversary. So at that point is where, okay, now where I am. At that point, you say, okay, well, now on 2 million. So I'm paying on 2 million across the board. Yeah, and you keep trading it out because the capital cost will change. I mean, the capital sometimes fluctuates, but then the capital is built and built and built on top, on top, on top. So it changes every year. All right. When it comes to property, yeah, deciding to sell residential property afterwards will not make it zakatable. So even with that, when you were switching in between switching and stuff, it wouldn't make it zakatable. So if you have a property, so somebody asked me that just last week. So they said that, you know what, I don't have these things for sale. Example, if you have a house, I don't have it for sale. If somebody come to ask me to buy it, I'll sell it. Right? When the price is good, everything's for sale, right? So the thing about that is you don't have to pay because your intention is not to sell. No, but if you sell it, then you have to pay on what you sell. Right? So what happens is that happens to sometimes people who do, as you say, a hustle and they buy and sell kind of things happen sometimes. So they have their personal vehicle. Now, if somebody gives me the price of my vehicle that I want, I'll sell it right away. Right? But is it for sale? No. But somebody comes and offers me, yes. Right? So then it changes right away. When you sell it. If it's a personal vehicle, is when you sell it. But if it's that you have a lot, then all that is stock. Right? That's the difference. No, we will can I close up now, inshallah. Land and real estate. So zakat is payable on any land and real estate bought to sell. Right? If you're selling and land and housing and things, so real estate still comes into there in zakat. Right? Land or real estate purchase as long-term store value and not with the intention of selling is not zakatable. Right? And last thing is if land or real estate is leased, right? Zakat is not due on the value of the asset. Instead, zakat is due on any rental income that will come for it. Similarly with properties, houses, and so on. Um, all right, now last thing I want to touch on, inshallah, is the zakat on your business assets. So business assets itself is zakat oriented, right? So assets of trade, so zakatable trade assets will be the bank deposits, the petty cash, the trade receivables, the loan receivables, the inventory, the stock, the investments in zakat assets. So any of those things that you have trading, anything that for example, you go on do some work for someone, you bill out your contractor, you build their washroom for them, you have to get payment. So that's still a payment. It might be mortar and brick, that's $20 there. Right? So you have assets outside there. So service providers and contractors sometimes have multiple things. And that's why I said sometimes you can have a lot of zakatable assets outside there, but no cash in your hand. It happens too in these type of trades. And again, I know people on millions of dollars levels, and still they don't have that fluidity of liquid cash. I still have to pay zakat. That's why calculated at that time. Calculate your zakat on the due of the anniversary properly with an accountant if you need to. Calculate it so you know the figure that you're working with. And then when you can actually disperse that zakat, maybe you will have a little bit of time. You'll have a little bit of, throughout the year and so on, which is not recommended, but as soon as you can, you should fulfill that. What you should do when you have that, because some businessmen they do that and they have a big issue now because every time this coming up, every year you have to take out. I know one businessman he have to take out $4 or $5 million every year from his stocks, big stocks. It's a big, amount of stuff, hardware and stuff. So what he does now is instead of doing that every year, you 1 year or 2, 3 years, you start paying ahead now. So if, for example, you realize that you have to pay $5 million in zakat, right? Every 14th of Ramadan. So what you do for that is throughout the year you pay $6, $7 million throughout the year, right? Because you're supposed to pay it on the day. You don't have that amount. So throughout the entire year you're paying seven now. Next year you pay seven. Next year you pay seven over 3 years. Now what happens there? In the 3 years you end up paying $2 million every year extra. Now you're ahead of your zakat amount. So now when it comes to that actual zakatable year, you can check, oh, I paid 6 million this year. Alhamdulillah, I paid my zakat. I prepaid my zakat. Now I don't, when I calculating it now, that figure on that day, I supposed to take it out, but I already take it out. So Alhamdulillah, I'm in green with Allah. And now when it goes for the forward year, you flip the direction of it. So now you pay, it was only 5 million he had to pay. He paid 6 million, so he had $1 million ahead. So now he have time that he could go taking his time for the next year. Like that. So that's the way to flip the direction so you're not in the red. So if a person dies, you wouldn't want to know that, hey, I had a $5 million to pay in zakat. I hope somebody pays my zakat for me because I'm in problems. Right. So even with that, when it comes to these things, right? So let me just quick. Going on, this is business zakat right now. We're talking about property, plants, equipments, capital, and fixed goods, fixtures, fittings, collaterals, all these things, trademarks, software, copyrights, and so on. You don't have to pay on those things. Those are not zakatable things. Valuation of trade assets, though, stock should be valued for zakat purposes on the market price. If goods do not have a retail price nor a market value, another proxy can be used to estimate the current value, right? Sometimes some things just don't have a thing. It's out of stock, it's stopped making, stopped manufacturing 10 years now, so you have to put a value to it. Zakat can be paid in cash or in assets itself in a form provided calculations that are accurate and best in the interest of the recipients are preserved. So you have the asset, you can give that itself as zakat to a person who is deserving. Now, when it comes to deductibles, right? A person have a loan, and the loan though is higher when it comes to business assets. The loan is higher than the value of the stock. The question arises: what do you take out now? Because when it comes to liabilities, you do take out your liabilities for zakat. So, for example, I have $100,000 on me here, but I have $100,000 of bills, people loan payments to pay right now this month, right? And I have $100,000 in my hand. Do I have to pay zakat, or do I not have to pay zakat? So a few little thing pointers. One is that my money or is that other people's money? It may be other people's money, so I have to give them back their money. I have to pay. It's payable right now. Now, however, if I have $100,000, I have $100,000 in loans and bills. But you know what? Most of those loans and bills is over a 5 year period. For example, the loan is over a 5 year period. So essentially, I just have to pay $20,000 this year. I don't have to pay the $100,000 that is due in 5 years over the time period that I have. So what do? I take out only $20,000. I only take out the liability deductible, what is due right now. Right? So what is due right now is what I have to take out. So that will happen in bills as well too and expenses. So incurred debts payable in within the 12 months period can be deducted as well, and that can be done over the full year period. So you can take out that amount. 12-year installments of long-term liabilities. If the debt is scheduled to be paid over a number of years, on the zakat anniversary, one may only deduct 1 year worth of the installments of the repayment. Right? So some people have like 20-year loans. You would say, well, no, I don't have thing. And especially when it comes to business, Business loans a lot of times are very different because business loans with financial things are fixed certain practices that they will have. So, like, I know someone who bought a very expensive vehicle, but that vehicle is paid over a certain period of time, right? I'm not saying that I encourage people to go into riba-based and interest-based transactions, but I'm saying is when it comes to calculating your zakat, you have, say, for example, you have $1 million vehicle, right? But you're only paying $100,000 for that $1 million vehicle over this period. So that's all you're gonna be able to take off. Otherwise, I mean, khair, that is the law and that's the Sharia. But if you were to go with taking out liabilities, you'll say, well, I have $1 million owing, I don't have to pay no zakat, right? And you'll want to say, hey, this is not liability. I mean, this is liability and I don't have to pay. So it is straightforward, really, inshallah. Okay, last thing I want to close off with is when you're going to spend zakat now. So zakat now is when you have the amount you've calculated it 2.5%, and there's a few formulas here and there, but it's pretty simple as there. You cannot give zakat to your spouse. You cannot give zakat to your children. You cannot give zakat to your grandchildren. You cannot give zakat to your parents or their parents, your grandparents. You cannot give zakat to a non-Muslim. You cannot give zakat to a wealthy person. Right, so those are pretty simple, inshallah. One of the things too is when you're giving out zakat now, know that when you give zakat to a person, then that person should be a receivable of zakat, right? And if that person is not receivable of zakat, and it's like a institution that you're giving your zakat to for them to distribute your zakat, just know that that person is a wakil, and you're not actually paying your zakat yet until they pay your zakat. So that is something too that people should be mindful of. That happens too when like for example, if I tell you, look, $1,000, go to San Fernando and give it to so and so person, right? Now you taking the money there, and what happened is you on the way without any negligence, without any problems and so on, you lost $1,000. Or somebody held you and robbed you or whatever. $1,000 gone from your property. Now, whose problem is that? Whose problem is that? The person you have to go and pay is my bill. Whose problem is this? It's my problem, right? He didn't do anything wrong. No negligence, no problems. I sent him to do my work. So he's now going to drop off that $1,000 to the bailiff, or whatever I don't even know what you call them properly. The person you drop off it to, and that person now will then got that $1,000 and stamp my documents to give me bail. On the way that was lost. You can't go and argue to the bailiff and say, hey, I sent $1,000, whether you get it or not, you have to stamp it. So be mindful of that, right? Because when you put it into institutions and you put it into charities, khair, they're responsible and they do their job and they service to our community and they do plenty work for us, right? Many of the charities are operate. They do service for the Muslim Ummah, and we need to actually support these institutions and these charities. But the reality is just know if you can do it yourself too, this is a better option, right? Because you have direct sometimes options to fulfill your ibadah. At least you secure yourself. What I would recommend sometimes is split it up into different categories so you know that this is payments being done right away. Or, like for example, I'll just tell you from my side, when we do it from Al Ihsan Institute and we collect zakat, right? We collect zakat for students. So right away when a zakat comes in, we don't store zakat for storage purposes or kept for spending throughout the year. It's applied to the needs of the student right away. So that is done and gone. So as soon as given, right? So similarly in thing, but I'm not saying just leave out that, I'm saying split it up because these, for example, the masjid, the charity organizations and so on was happening in Palestine. they will have to collect, and because they have tons of work to do for whole society, the whole community. So don't undermine to their work, because that needs to happen too. That process needs to take place. It's just be mindful of it when you make decisions, inshallah. Right? So that was when you're giving it out. Very important to do in a way that is beneficial, inshallah. The last thing is that when you do pay zakat, it's always best to kind of consider that when you're paying, pay to people and situations and things that will help the betterment of the recipient. Quite frankly, and I'll end with this note really, is that zakat is used and paid a lot. Things like hampers and stuff. And people find it to be like a sense of giving. I just give a hamper. I just fed a host of the people and so on. Those are actually things that you should do generally, normally, right? And when you feed people normally, and if you have a little portion that you keep from zakat to feed a certain zakatable family and so on, that's no problem. But that shouldn't be the go-to way of spending zakat wealth. That you know what, I'll buy 1,000 hampers and give it all out. Zakat should be a substantial thought process that, you know what, how can I alleviate poverty from people's life and increase their benefit to society at large? So you look at investments from the zakat in a way to, when you give it in a way that, you know what, it's empowering people's benefit, and they'll take the same thing. And in 5 years' time, they will be out of this situation and they will be in a situation that will be earning and bettering themselves. So you give them, for example, stock that they can go and sell, or you give them the know-how or the ability to learn how to sell, or to how to open a business, or how to give them roofing over their head and the housing. So you go to those things that you know that what, and you know, in fact, when you give them a housing, for it might be a zakah sadaqah jariyah, a zakah obligatory, but a benefit for them that they will use for 10, 15, 20 years. So that's one way to also look at it, and also, students of knowledge, people who are in the service of Deen, things like you would have better options because those people will utilize the zakat in a way that will be beneficial to society as well, and as opposed to going and giving it out to groups of people who may not themselves be interested in even in their Deen. So you give them a bunch of hampers and you just give it out, then yes, mashallah, that helps in one regard. But put that as a priority, as a percentage across the board to know how to act and how to register importance according to priorities. And that will be. So even with that, when zakat is given, I would believe, and my personal practice would try to encourage people to give sadaqah to these people. And zakat, yes, but zakat, very minimal to, I should say, handouts. The handouts for zakat should be the minimalist amount of percentage, but the greater portion of zakat should be go to substantial, long-term zakatable projects. And then obviously, the last thing on that, it comes up to sometimes to determining priority to need. So, for example, in Palestine is a big need, and cost millions and billions of dollars, accordingly give. When that time comes again, give again and give again and give when you can give, when you have. But make sure that you check your ibadah properly and try to facilitate also. And when I say that too, I even separating, because you have to be mindful and smart about your ibadah too. Make sure you spend locally, and if you send for foreign and for needs, make sure that you still maintain your local things, because you can never go and spend on others and not see about your own family. That is a requirement as well. So that's something very important when proportioning things. You try to have a bigger spread and not just leave everything to happen. Okay, inshallah. So, um, this is the zakat, inshallah, and it's important to continue this process, inshallah, that helps society. It's important to help all of the different funds and so on that help in zakat. So look around and see where the zakats are being spent. You know, I can tell you from this masjid, we have different types of funds as well. For example, people who need health support, we have housing support, we have tuition support, we have even handout support, we have one-off support, we have sometimes given like with people with business aspects of their things. So there's a form, there's a committee, they look at it, they try to look and see how this would be best help a person. And generally, when handouts are given out from the masjid's funds and so on, which they provide the service for the community, they would generally give out handouts from Sadaqah. So what happens is there is a somewhat of a differentiation as well when um, the zakat thing. We do have a zakat policy as well that we try to adhere to, and that governs the system and how it runs as well. So that's something also very beneficial. So Jazakumullah for coming, inshallah, and sitting on for this session. Unfortunately, we had a little bit of technical things here and there. Do message me if you need to get any more questions and queries, or even want personalized support towards calculation of your zakat, because some people's situations are a little bit different as well. So you can come for a consultation here in the office as well during the week. You can just book one, and also in the masjid WhatsApp, I was saying you can. I'll just type the numbers on the groups here: 675 7 1 4 5. So this is a free service. You know, you don't have nothing to worry about. Um, put my number as well, and also the Alisan Institute office number. And inshallah, that helps a lot to be able to fulfill your requirements. Right, these are the different numbers, inshallah. All right, so Jazakumullah for coming and to being able to look into the importance of zakat in our lives. Inshallah, when we keep working on zakat in a productive way, it will definitely become an asset and a betterment to society, and you'll be contributing generally for the upliftment of your ummah and your Muslims in the country, inshallah. Jazakumullah khaira. Assalamu alaikum wa rahmatullahi wa barakatuh. أقول قولي هذا أستغفر الله لي ولكم ولسائر المسلمين فاستغفروه إنه هو الغفور الرحيم السلام عليكم ورحمة الله